recently decided to pursue diplomacy over military action, with Iran turning down Israel's plans to strike Iranian nuclear sites as soon as next month, according to a New York Times report. Israel had prepared a detailed military plan to set back Iran's nuclear program by a year or more, hoping for U.S. backing. But despite initial optimism, Trump chose a path of negotiation over conflict, opting to engage Tehran in talks instead of supporting an Israeli attack. This decision came after months of heated internal debate, exposing a deep divide within Trump's cabinet. On one side, with the hawkish officials advocating for military action to cripple Iran's nuclear ambitions. On the other, more cautious sides, worried about sparking a larger war in the Middle East with long-lasting consequences. In the end, the diplomatic route prevailed, at least for now. Israeli officials were reportedly ready to move forward with their strike plans in May, and they believed the U.S. would back them up. However, Trump's decision to withhold support sends a clear message his administration is focusing on negotiating a deal to limit Iran's nuclear program instead. During a recent meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Trump confirmed the U.S. would not participate in an Israeli-led attack, revealing that negotiations with Iran are now underway, with a few months to finalize a deal. The tension between diplomacy and war has never been more palpable. However, Netanyahu was not pleased, insisting that any agreement with Iran must include provisions for military action, including the ability to dismantle Iran's facilities under American supervision. A nuclear deal with Iran must be a Libya-style agreement whereby those responsible go in, blow up the facilities, dismantle all the equipment under American supervision, with American execution. Notably, U.S. President Donald Trump, in a statement on March 17th, condemned the Houthi attacks, accusing Iran of being the driving force behind them. He emphasized that Iran supplies the Houthis with weapons, money, and intelligence. Let nobody be fooled. The hundreds of attacks being made by Houthi, the sinister mobsters and thugs based in Yemen who are hated by the Yemeni people, all emanate from and are created by Iran. Any further attack or retaliation by the Houthis will be met with great force, and there is no guarantee that that force will stop there. Iran has played the innocent victim of rogue terrorists from which they have lost control. But they haven't lost control. They're dictating every move, giving them the weapons, supplying them with money and highly sophisticated military equipment, and even so-called intelligence. Every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being a shot fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran. And Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences. And those consequences will be dire. Oil prices extended gains on April 17th amid rising concerns over tighter global supply. The market responded to fresh U.S. sanctions on Iranian oil trade and commitments from some members of Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, to cut production further, driving Brent crude up 56 cents to $66.41 per barrel, and U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude up 65 cents to $63.12. Both benchmarks closed 2% higher on April 16th, marking their highest level since April 3rd, and are poised for a weekly rise, their first in 3 weeks, despite Thursday marking the final trading day ahead of the Easter holiday. Tony Sycamore, market analyst at IG, cited a mix of short covering a weaker U.S. dollar and renewed geopolitical tensions, particularly U.S. pressure on Iran, as key drivers behind the rally. He noted that while West Texas Intermediate could rebound from $65 to $67, macroeconomic pressures like stagnant U.S. growth and slowing Chinese GDP could limit upside potential. I think the rally has a couple of factors behind it. The short covering the weaker USD, which makes crude oil cheaper to buy, and the U.S. pressure on Iran. If we assume that U.S. growth is going to be flat at best for the next 2 quarters and Chinese GDP is set to slow to somewhere between the 3%-4% band, it's not good for crude oil. Michael McCarthy, CEO of Mumu, noted that despite skepticism about Iranian production levels and OPEC compliance, the announcements added a bullish tone. Further support came from a larger-than-expected drawdown in U.S. gasoline and distillate stocks. These factors certainly could have affected sentiment. I would argue that Iranian production is not significant and that OPEC quotas are more often breached than observed. But both factors fed into the more bullish tone. Much of the recent selling pressure in global crude markets related to fears of an imminent flood of U.S. oil. But the drop in refining suggests that bottlenecks to supply may be emerging. Meanwhile, Iran has confirmed that its high-stakes nuclear talks with the U.S. will take place in Rome this weekend, ending days of confusion over the location. This announcement comes after Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian approved the resignation of a key figure who played a crucial role in the 2015 nuclear deal, adding more intrigue. The head of the UN nuclear watchdog, Rafael Grossi, arrived in Tehran on April 17th, fueling speculation that discussions may include critical negotiations about inspector access. Oman once again will mediate the talks, a role it played during last weekend's discussions in Muscat. The talks are set against the backdrop of soaring tensions, with President Trump threatening airstrikes if Iran doesn't come to the table, while Iran warns it may push ahead with developing nuclear weapons. It's a high-stakes game with global security hanging in the balance.